Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another historian's interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe. And joining me today is an historian making her official debut here on the show. Now, here's a little bit about our guest today. She is an insatiable person with a incredible passion for history, more specifically the Second World War and history in general. Her love and drive to pursue a career in history, specifically World War II, began when she befriended the last of the Arizona survivors, Lou Conter. She made a promise to him and his fellow shipmates that she would do whatever she could to keep their stories alive. Currently, she is designing a World War II themed tour for high school students for one of the Placer County museums, the DeWitt History Museum on the site of the DeWitt Army Hospital, where she mentioned him and several other locals who went off to fight and those who supported from home. She is very passionate, detail-oriented, and always eager to learn something new. And with all that and more, joining us today is our guest of honor, historian Natalie Brennan. Natalie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on, Gabriel.
No problem, Natalie, no problem. So I'm so excited to have you here on the show, and also because I don't get a lot of World War II historians on the show, so I'm really, really excited to learn about your passion for the Second World War and what that has meant to you as an historian. So before we dive deep into that, is there anything more you would like to add about your background as an historian?
Well, in all honesty, I am still trying to comprehend the fact that I can actually now officially be called a historian. It was my dream ever since I was a kid, and now I'm actually able to call myself one.
Awesome. That is incredible. That is amazing. So let's start at the very beginning. So from your bio, as you said, that you are very, very passionate about history, and you've made it your mission to, tell the story of Lou Conter and his fellow shipmates, and, making sure their stories are not forgotten, which is, I think, admirable. And I think everyone should, keep the stories of the greatest generation alive. So what put you on that path to becoming an historian? Were you always interested in history growing up, or was there a specific aha moment that really pushed you to make the decision, this is the career that I want to dedicate my life to?
Well, that's a kind of a long story, but really it kind of started in elementary school.
Okay.
Around fourth grade specifically, my interest was kind of a little bit into the gold rush, because I mean, living in Placer County, I'm not very far away from where gold was found at Coloma.
Oh, okay.
Quite literally in our backyard. But I always kind of felt that there was something missing. And when I was in fourth grade, my family and a couple of friends took a trip to Washington, D.C. because, well, my brother, I have a brother who's 4 years older than me. He was in eighth grade. The schools where we were, they would take a trip to Washington, D.C., but we decided to make our own adventure out of it.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we drove all the way out to Gettysburg and Bull Run, and for me, that was where it clicked, was the Civil War.
Nice. That's amazing. I only think I remember going to some of the battles of the Civil War in high school, but yeah, there is this feeling when you're on that field and you can just imagine what it was like. I mean, we see documentaries, we've seen reenactments, but it's a whole other feeling when you're actually physically there and realizing, shoot, this is one of the biggest battles in our nation's history during the middle of the 1800s. And that is just awesome, Natalie. So curious, what pushed you to specifically specialize in World War II?
I'll give credit to my father and my grandfather, James So my grandfather was a naval aviator.
Wow.
He got in after Korea, and he left just before Vietnam. So he had that small window, and he was one of the lucky ones. So, and my father and grandfather, they're both pilots. So I've always grown up with a love of airplanes, but I always found myself drawn to the World War II warbirds specifically because for me, they kind of just had a little bit more personality, if you will. They had
Right.
like a soul, if you call it that.
Awesome. That's actually really, really cool. Yeah. The planes of the Second World War, they are just so amazing. And I don't know the specific model of this plane, but my personal favorite fighter plane of the Second World War is, of course, the Flying Tigers during the early parts of the Second World War. I just love the design. I love the history behind them. And I think very few people know about the Flying Tigers unless you've seen the Hollywood movie, but there's more history to that. But that's amazing, Natalie. That is incredible. So now let's talk about your journey down this path of becoming an historian. So after you finish your education and your academics and you want to build upon your career, ultimately for you as an historian, what is your goal with every project you're working on, whether it's like doing museum tours or meeting veterans from the Arizona or just sharing history in general, and ultimately your promise to fellow history enthusiasts and other history buffs?
Oh, well, I always say my ultimate goal is to one day work somewhere with significance to World War II, whether that's at the National World War II Museum in New Orleans, the one who master's program that I was in, or Normandy, or really part of me just also really wants to work at Pearl Harbor because
Oh,
that's where I made that promise to Lou, to Donald Stratton, all those guys. That's ultimately where I made that vow.
that's amazing, Natalie. That is incredible. And this actually is a little fan question that I did want to ask. This is actually from one of my viewers. So they asked this question: for you, what has been the most challenging aspect of being an historian?
Challenging aspect of being a historian. Well, for my education, it was kind of being humbled, if you will.
Mm.
One of the first things we learned when we went into that program is if you think you know World War II, you know nothing.
Yes, that is absolutely true, and I've even learned that myself on one unit in particular, which is the 26 Filipino Scouts in the Philippines, which no one knows about, like not even me, and learning about them and their history, slight tangent of yours and interest, but it is a little important, is that the Filipino Scouts was the last true armed force in the Philippines that held off the Japanese for as long as they did up until the early months of the Second World War in 1942. So the Japanese invaded just after Pearl Harbor in 41, and they held them off till I believe March or April of 42. But again, these stories, as you said, Natalie, no one knows about them. And you're absolutely right. If you think you know World War II, you absolutely do not, because there are so many lost stories that are out there. And there's also a little fun question, another from one of my viewers. What's probably been the most fascinating story you've uncovered as an historian pertaining to the Second World War? It could be a person, it could be like a battle, a unit, or just anything in general.
Most interesting. I mean, I could gush all day about my friend Lou Conter because he was a treasure trove of all these different interesting stories. I mean, at Pearl Harbor that day when the ship blew up. He was located between gun turret number 3 and the tripod mast.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah,
Right
and
there.
had he been 5 minutes earlier in securing the quarterdeck, he would have been in the bridge with Admiral Kidd and Captain Van Valkenburg. And those two were never found.
Wow.
Yeah. And also, too, after Pearl Harbor, he joined VP-11, the Black Cat Squadron, so they flew
nice.
spies. And he got shot down twice during the war, one of which was by a P-40 Warhawk, your favorite plane.
Mm-hmm.
And but that was the second time. First time was when they were 7 miles offshore of a Japanese-held island in 21-foot waves at night and in shark-infested waters.
Oh no! Oh no!
And their commanding officer basically said, "Well, here's the facts as they are. Say your prayers. We're not going to see morning." And Mr. Conter, who was a lower rank, he basically said, "Malarkey to that. We're not going to die. Everybody link arms, help each other tread water. We're going to swim those 7 miles to that island, and if a shark comes up to you, punch him in the nose." And they managed. They made it to that island, and they were rescued by a PT boat the next morning. And yeah, and he even was participated in the Sepik River rescue in New Guinea. And he rescued over 200 Australian coast watchers who were being pursued by the Japanese in the jungles of Papua New Guinea along the Sepik River. And they actually befriended some of the local tribes who were cannibals.
Wow. Holy mackerel. That is incredible. And that actually segues into the next question, which I'm very excited to ask you this, Natalie. How did your friendship with Mr. Conter come about? How did you guys meet? And how did it blossom into this, incredible friendship, as well as the duty to keep not only his story alive, but the story of his fellow shipmates?
That friendship really began when I was a junior in high school. So what happened was we were given our big junior writing assignment in English class.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to choose a famous speech, annotate the speech, explain what it says, then go into the historical background of it, and then lastly, we had to apply it to recent history.
Okay.
Around this time, I was already starting to get into Pearl Harbor and learned about the fate of the Arizona. And my grandfather, who was a member of the Placer County Council Navy League, which I am now on the board of directors of, he said, "Hey, we sometimes have guest speakers who were in the war. And we also have a guy who was at Pearl Harbor that day who is a member. The guest speaker that's coming up is a sailor who served on the Hornet. And he got to see the Doolittle Raiders take off and also was there when the ship sank at the Santa Cruz Islands." So we went, and by luck, Mr. Conter and his wife sit across from us. And so I want to give you this picture real quick because it's kind of priceless. There's this room of maybe at least 75 people.
Okay.
Veterans, spouses, kids, and civilians who support the sea services, which is what the Navy League is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the only young person in this entire room.
Oh, wow.
So I am a sight to behold. So Mr. Conter asks me, what brings you here to this meeting? So I tell him, well, I was told there was a man who was in World War II, and I'm really interested in that history. And then he starts to quiz me on, like, when did World War II start? So I said, well, depending on who you ask, for some of the world, it started September 1st, 1939, when Germany invaded Poland. But for the United States, it was December 7th, 1941, when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, he had the biggest grin on his face. He said, I was there at Pearl Harbor on the Arizona. And I swear my jaw must have been on the floor. It's like, what? having learned how many hands were killed on that ship, 1,177, and as far as I know, they're all still on the ship. It's like, how could anyone survive that? And so he conveniently had a picture of the memorial with the whole ship in the photograph, and he pointed out where the bomb hit at near turret number 2 and where he was standing.
Mm.
And so then we just start talking, and it just literally blossomed into this friendship that every time we would see each other, we'd both light up. And
Awesome.
And I had confessed to him that the one and only time I had ever been to Pearl Harbor, I was probably 5 years old. I didn't know what I was standing on. It was for a 5-year-old me, it's like, this is a very weird building. But he told me, oh, you are coming with me to the 73rd anniversary. And that's exactly what my folks and I did. We joined his family, which is funnily enough called the Contourage.
Oh, that is not bad. That is amazing. I love that.
So and we went 73rd, 74th, 75th anniversary, the 76th, and I think the 78th was the last time we all went together. And each time, I mean, I think it was the 75th anniversary, I had asked him if he would introduce me to his other shipmates. At this time, there were only 4 who were there. And it Ken Potts, Lauren Bruner, Mr. Conter, and Donald Stratton. Lauren Bruner and Donald Stratton were in the front half of the ship.
Oh, boy.
In the fire control tower just above the bridge. And okay, real quickly, have you ever seen the remake of the movie Midway?
Yes.
Okay, that scene with Pearl Harbor where you see the guys climbing over to the neighboring ship?
Mm-hmm.
That's them.
Get out. No way.
Except the movie makes the rope snap and they all fall in the water. All 6 of the men who were survived in that area, they managed to make it across to the Vestal, the repair ship. And yeah, I remember when Mr. Conter introduced me to Donald Stratton, he had that big smile on his face, and he said, "This young lady is the youngest member of our county Navy League." And to my somewhat embarrassment, I started to cry, and that was when I made the promise. And I took Donald Stratton's hand and I said, "I promise I'll never let anyone forget your stories or those of your shipmates. I swear I will continue all of your stories." And Stratton's granddaughter actually saw me, and she turned to my parents and said, "She gets it." And my father, he's like, "These people are the Beatles for her."
That is incredible, Natalie. That is a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that with us. That is ultimately amazing. I've had my own opportunity to meet some veterans from the Second World War. Some of them I remember just here in San Diego a long time ago. I was at the Marine Corps Museum in San Diego, and they actually had a gunnery sergeant there with the new recruits, and he was telling stories about the armory. The armory was open, and he brought up his favorite, which was the Browning automatic rifle. And the young recruit, trying being delicate and everything, showing it off. And the gunnery sergeant is like, son, just give that to me. Hold it up, and held it in a way that just felt natural to him. And it was like, this is amazing. And then he actually let all the recruits and also some of the visitors hold the guns. And I was like, I am holding a replica, or not a replica, I'm actually holding a piece of military history with a veteran right next to me. And I'm like, thinking to myself, and I did not know history at the time, but looking back, and I was like, holy cow, it's incredible. So from that incredible experience and that goal that you set out for yourself, what has sort of been like the overall reactions from people in your area when you give like tours about the Arizona, World War II in general, and also your friends and family when you told them that this is the career that I really want to pursue?
Well, fortunately, there's not very few World War II centric jobs where I am, except for the tour I designed for the DeWitt Hospital. But when first, because that's part of the Placer County Museums, so those are really just volunteers, and
Right.
volunteered there kind of really beginning in the pandemic. And it was really interesting because last year during the summer event we call Heritage Trail, so all the museums in the county are participating. When I was there for the DeWitt Museum, I got to kind of give a tour modeled off of the high school themed tour that I'm designing, and it was really interesting to see some of the guests and listen to them because they learned it from their parents who were in the war. I remember this one older couple. The gentleman said his father was a Japanese American soldier on Okinawa.
Ooh.
Was used as the translator to try and convince the civilians that don't jump off the cliffs, we're not going to hurt you. He was trying to talk them out of committing mass suicide from that was just a mind-blowing moment. But from kind of just the visitors to the museum that day, they honestly really seemed happy to know that, I guess, a younger person is this passionate about telling the story of the war,
yeah,
and the people who were in it. And as for my family and friends, they were not very surprised when I told them this was what I wanted to do.
Absolutely.
Because full disclosure, I kind of learned through the master's program that I'm not really the academia type of historian. I'm more of the storyteller type.
Thank you. Someone actually said the thing I've been trying to say for a long, long time. Thank you, Natalie.
Oh, thank goodness I've had another one.
No, but I get the struggle. I get it, all that. And that's actually something that we're going to be touching on, especially when we get into the business side of being a historian, because there's a whole bunch of stuff in that section of the interview. But before we get to that, there were a few more questions that I did want to ask you, and some more fan questions as well. Now, as an historian, ultimately, what message do you want visitors to take away from the tours that you give? And also, is there a favorite moment or segment from the tour that you like to share with visitors when they come?
Well, all I can really give was with the DeWitt Museum for that tour I designed. What I want people to really take away from it is literally almost everything that's going on right now has its origins to the war, if not a little bit before it.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, this is still considered the deadliest war in world history.
Yes.
An estimated total of 70 million people were killed.
Mm-hmm.
400,000 of those were Americans. And with the greatest generation now going away, it's kind of up to us to understand why things happened the way they did, what led to those decisions being made,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully learning from it. As cliche as this sounds, learning from it so it won't happen again.
Absolutely.
It's a vicious cycle, and I mean, seeing everything that's going on right now, I just look at the TV with like,
Yes, same. 100% agree, Natalie. Absolutely. Now, this next question goes back to some of the answers that you gave before, and I think it is important to talk about is, of course, being historians in the digital age, because the scholarship has changed over the last 20 something years. And this idea of, historians using social media as a platform to tell stories, do interviews and stuff like that. But also, as I talked with a lot of people on this show, it also builds up a lot of anxiety and imposter syndrome, especially because, as historians in the digital age, it's a lot easier to have our credibility be called into question and say, you don't know what you're talking about, or that didn't happen, or this didn't happen. And it's a double-edged sword, because on one side, we're able to reach like-minded academics or fellow history buffs who, let's say, have their own podcast or do similar things. But on the other side, again, we do leave ourselves exposed to a lot of hate speech, trolls, negativity, and people not taking us seriously. And for us viewers and listeners, like, we are still learning and honing our craft. We do not profess to know everything in our field, but we are experts to a certain degree, especially if there's one aspect within our field that we are truly passionate about. And again, this idea of anxiety builds up in all of us, and imposter syndrome really plays into effect. And sometimes we get locked in our funk. We don't want to pursue our passion, and sometimes we just want to retreat in the corner. So for you, Natalie, for yourself as an historian, have you ever had those moments of imposter syndrome and high anxiety? And if so, or if not, what has disciplined you to continue, your passion, your career? Because no matter what gets thrown at you, you made a promise, not just to yourself, but to your friend, to tell their stories and the stories of others down the road.
well, for the digital age, ironically enough, I'm not tech savvy at all. I don't really use social media a whole lot because the negativity really just does not do me very, very good.
1% agree.
Anybody, but I think just the hardest part with, I mean, at least for my experience, not necessarily in the digital age, it was ironically enough, having to come to terms with the fact that pretty soon there are no more World War II veterans. I mean, I am now living in a time frame where Lou Conter is gone. And I just made a comment on this yesterday because we were watching, my folks and I were watching the Roosevelts, that new series by Ken Burns, and it showed footage of the Arizona blowing up. And I just kind of sat there and said, watching that hits differently now. just kind of remember Mr. Conter couldn't watch it, but now knowing he's gone, it's like, oh.
Right.
But as for me, disciplining myself to fulfill that promise, through the newsletters that I write for the Navy League, I'm hopefully fulfilling that promise, because I do talk about World War II. Sometimes we'll talk about an individual, sometimes we'll talk about an event. And I have to always tell myself, Natalie Brennan keeps her word.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. That is very beautiful and very well said, Natalie. And this actually kind of adds to what I like to say, as not only am I a historian, but also an author. But I think the statement really goes hand in hand, is that writing, whether on what kind of writing it is, writing is not an indulgence, it's an obligation. And I definitely feel that can be easily applied to history, that writing about history, studying history is not an indulgence, it's an obligation, because history repeats itself. And if we don't learn the lessons from the past, ultimately we are doomed to repeat it. Or in some cases, stories get forgotten, stories get disregarded or discarded, and pieces end up missing forever. So I applaud you for your commitment to your journey, not just to yourself, but also to your friend and his colleagues as well. And this kind of goes into an opinion question, which I would very much love to hear your thoughts on, Natalie, is this notion of the COVID years, the lockdown years, as sort of creating a new golden age, or rather an iron age of historians. Now, what I mean by that is, COVID years, everybody was in lockdown, we couldn't meet. But for a lot of people that I've had on the show, fellow authors and historians, we kind of experimented with, what we want to do to, stop the boredom. And once things started, easing up, you had a wave of independent voices flooding the markets. And I love that. As an independent creator and an independent historian, I absolutely love that. And some people have argued we're in a golden age. But with also the rise of AI entering the field, it's also kind of put things into a different perspective. So for you, Natalie, in your opinion, and from your own personal experiences, do you feel that we are in a golden age, or rather an iron age, of new voices in the history field?
Well, in all honesty, I think we're kind of walking a very fine line between the two.
Okay. All right.
Certainly we are in a golden age where we're doing exactly what you said, but also relying very heavily on AI. I mean, whenever I have a question, I go on Google, first thing that comes up is AI, and I'm very hesitant to trust it, so I'll actually deliberately scroll away from the AI generated, go for a source that I feel is the most credible, and usually those sources would be from museums or the .orgs, because that has been drilled into my head ever since 8th grade.
Yes, absolutely. And also, speaking of that, this I thought was a perfect counter for or explanation for AI. One guest said, asking AI to do anything when it comes to writing or anything is asking a 7th grade alcoholic to write a report for you. And I thought that is the most beautiful sentence I have ever heard, because it is kind of true. It's not going to be grammatically correct. You're going to have to fix it anyway. You end up rewriting the whole thing in of itself, and especially for history. Now, I do like the use of AI in terms of organizing my sources. That I absolutely find very helpful. But when it comes to writing research or anything, no. I like to do the research myself, just as I'm sure you would too, Natalie. So it is I understand what you said, that this fine line that new voices are entering the workforce, bringing new perspectives to the field, but of course, AI is entering. And this also is another question which I like to ask, and I really want to hear your thoughts on is, do you believe in the history field there are gatekeepers for certain areas, certain disciplines?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I mean, first thing that kind of would come into that would be, because there's two, and I've actually experienced my fair share of the second case, but first thing that comes to my mind would be the M4 Sherman tank versus the Tiger. You have different groups that are constantly butting heads on which one was the better one.
Mm-hmm.
And back to with academia versus storytellers, there's a huge. I went to New Orleans during D-Day because the museum was having a celebration of the graduates who went through their program.
Mm.
And I was talking to some of the military historians, and I let it slip that I learned through the program that I'm not the academia type, I'm the storyteller type. But before I was able to say the rest of my sentence, which was going to be, I tried to put the two together, their attitudes toward me did a complete 180.
Oh, that
Like,
is unfortunate to hear, Natalie. I'm sorry that you experienced that.
there were a few that were actually also storytellers, so that was really refreshing to hear. But initially, until I found those storyteller historians, I was internally panicking, thinking, "Oh dear God, I just shot myself in the foot. I have burned down any chance of working at this place because I let that slip." But
Right.
I don't see why there's a need to gatekeep, because, and I expressed this to the museum's archives manager, who also went through the program. I had mentioned to him, if we want the public, the general public, to be interested in this subject and continue telling its stories, they need to be entertained. And stories, I mean, look at the word history. Story is in that word. It's
Yes.
the people. So it always kind of confused me as to why can't we put the two together? I mean, in the newsletters that I write, I tell it as a story to keep the readers interested, but I also add in that academia, the analysis as to why things happened the way they did, what the decisions were, what led to those choices being made, and how it matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I just never really understood the need to gatekeep certain things.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I, in my own experience, have not encountered that, but talking with other historians, there is this kind of, which is unfortunate, this disconnect between the academia and the non-academia. And even going forward, you have academia and you also have government historians who work in federal buildings. Then you also have the middle path, the storytellers who take bits and pieces to formulate. And, that is actually a perfect segue into now the business side of being an historian, which is ultimately, Natalie, what have been some of the challenges you've encountered as a storyteller historian, and looking back from when you first began on this journey of yours, how would you do things differently, or would you do things differently?
Well, in all honesty, I don't think I'd do things differently. I feel like having best of both reaches a bit of a broader audience.
Right.
I mean, one of the professors from this master's program, he was senior historian at the museum, Dr. Rob Citino. He was easily everybody's favorite teacher. He's an academic historian, but the way he gave his lectures, it was almost like a story. Because too, the amount of passion and love for the subject he had was contagious. Because you could just tell he loved what he was doing. And in turn, we loved to listen.
Yes, and I think you touch on a very important thing, which is, unfortunately, the way history is being taught now is unfortunately the thing that turns people away from history, that it's names, dates, places, and memorization, and it's crammed down our throats. And that is not it. History is more than just that. And going even further, the historiography of history, how it's told and shared, is also changing. And that could be a whole discussion in and of itself. But ultimately, viewers and listeners, and Natalie sure will agree, history is so complex, because one person's villain is another person's hero, and there are so many aspects of history, and specifically World War II. I was actually seeing, and this actually ties perfectly to what Natalie said in the beginning, that if you think you know World War II, you don't. And it was this discussion of, who was more atrocious. I remember this was a discussion at my own seminar. The Germans under Hitler, the Russians under Stalin, or the Japanese under Hirohito. And everyone agreed the Germans were the most horrendous. But I think as historians or people who don't really know much of Japan, before the United States got involved, Japanese at that time, from the 30s and the 40s, I won't go too much in detail, their advancements to understanding the human body and their experiments are some of the most horrendous ever documented. There's actually one facility in Japan that was specifically used to test their theories on human subjects. One of them was the most infamous: how much water is in the human body. Again, I don't want to go too much in detail because it is very, very graphic. But just as Natalie has said in the beginning, that is a part of history that not a lot of people talk about in the mainstream, or rather it doesn't get documented as much.
Yeah, in all honesty, sometimes comparing the atrocities committed by Germany, Soviet Union, and Japan, in a way, it's somewhat comparing apples to oranges, because they're
absolutely
three different countries, three different cultures. But with Japan, I would sometimes it almost feels like the National Socialist German Workers' Party were taking notes from them with Japan's Unit 731, if I correct.
Yes, that's the one, the infamous Unit 731.
Yes, I almost feel like the Germans were taking notes from them. Because
absolutely,
think about it. That was not 1931, the invasion of Manchuria. I think that was where it was located, and that was, I think, before Hitler even came to power.
Yes, 100%, absolutely. But again, unfortunately, we don't learn about that part of history, or rather it's not talked about it as much. And this actually goes into the next question, which is, as historians, understanding our audience. Because I think as academics, which I'm sure you definitely will agree, Natalie, in academia, we are conditioned to speak a certain way and interact with fellow academic historians in this way. But you and I are very much the same, in that we are storyteller historians. So our approach to history is very different. So for you, do you have a good idea of who your audience is? And how long, like through trial and error, did you really figure out these are the people that I want to, teach history to, or rather, this is how I want to share history with my audience?
Well, I think again, but it definitely will depend on your audience. Like, for instance, the two jobs that I work, I have to give tours, but they're two different historical subjects. One is Gold Rush and the history of Sacramento and why it lifted itself because of the Great Floods.
Mm-hmm.
The other job is all about the history and culture of the Nishinan tribe, at the WWII Museum. And for the latter, it's mostly school children that we're giving, and they're ranging from 3rd to 5th grade. We have to talk about some pretty dark subjects in that museum, specifically the gold rush and the boarding schools. And those are
yes,
really heavy topics to talk about. And also, too, we don't know the children's experience. So I've kind of modeled it after putting it in a perspective at least the kids would understand. So I mean, I'll give it that example of how I do it is I have them look at the display. It shows like the kids being in military uniforms with short hair, and none of them are smiling. And I ask them if they look happy. And then I ask them if they're familiar with the gold rush. And I say it was found on Nishinan homeland. And when the miners and the settlers came here, I asked them, did they care that the land was already lived in? And then I tell the kids, think about what makes them who they are as a person. Ask themselves what languages they speak, what holidays they like to celebrate, their favorite clothing, their favorite foods. And then I tell them, imagine someone comes along, looks, speaks, dresses, and acts completely different than you. And they tell you everything about you that makes you who you are is bad. And you're going to go to a place where you're going to forget and become the way they want you to be. And I mean, I don't want to end the tour on that note, because I mean, I don't want to depress children.
Well, traumatize them, yeah.
We don't want to, and I literally tell them, it's like, I'm not telling you this to make you sad. I hate talking about this because I get sad. I'm telling you because it's the truth of what happened to a lot of children. And I want all of you. But I also kind of add a slight silver lining, and I tell them many kids who were sent to those schools, they didn't forget who they were, they remembered. And it's because of them, we know what we do about all these different cultures from the first inhabitants of the state. And then I take them into the contemporary section to show them, like, yeah, Nishinan people and Native people are still here. They're contemporary. They're dressed like us. They look like us. They're not different, and they're able to practice their culture. And then I take them to the founder of the museum, who was taken to a school when he was 12.
I imagine he has a lot of stories and unfortunately, a lot of trauma from those schools.
But I tell them that he actually snuck off the school grounds because he didn't like where they took him. So I'm like, good on him. He's an honor. He was an honored elder, and I tell the kids it's because of him the museum you're standing in right now exists. So
beautifully said, Natalie. And that in of itself is a goal of, like, telling history honestly and sometimes brutally, but contextualizing it for your audience. Now, granted, if these were, middle schooler or high schoolers or young adults, I imagine you would still give the same information, but you would trust them that you could go a little bit more in depth, but I absolutely love your approach to it. And ultimately, this comes to what I like to call finding our voice as an historian, which I think doesn't get a lot of discussion. What I mean by that is, going again back in school, we're going to be taught certain ways, but there are also going to be fellow people, fellow peers who mold us and instill in us, how we approach history. Again, you and I are both storytellers. We love telling history in a more narrative style, and we want to showcase our individuality and our identity, but we also have to understand that going into that field, there is an expectation that we have to uphold. So ultimately, Natalie, for you as an historian, how do you balance the two? And also, especially an historian with a background in World War II, because that also has an expectation to be met from, history enthusiasts and fellow history minds alike.
I do my best to meet those expectations. I mean, in school, all of my discussion posts would be ripped to shreds by the professors because they don't like the story parts. Just tell it like it is, and you're not forming arguments. And I always I honestly just try to meet in the middle.
Absolutely.
Because that way both sides are satisfied.
100%. And this goes into probably one of my new favorite questions to ask. And it's more of an opinion question, but I think it does need to be talked about, is having like workshop classes in the history department. And what I mean by that, viewers and listeners, out of all of the liberal arts majors in college, from my own experiences, the history field tends to be the one that doesn't get a lot of workshops in the sense of how to use your degree practically. There's usually two paths presented to us when we graduate from college: academia, going straight back into the education world as teachers or professors, or the federal workforce, being employees at museums, federal buildings, heritage sites, and what have you. Both are very good and important. Nothing wrong about that. But generally speaking, and from the people that I've met on the show thus far, not everyone wants to be a teacher. Not everyone wants to work in a building. They want to go down their own path, their own middle path, and pull from pieces. And I, fortunately, at my university in San Francisco State, we had the opportunity to have those workshops. And that's where I was able to meet a fellow historian who was an author. And that got the gears rolling to use that other side of me, which is the writer, to write history stories as well as magazine articles. And because of that, I've been published numerous times in a lot of magazines, some in the UK, some here in the United States, and more recently published in the oldest military history magazine company, Strategies and Tactics. That is incredible. But going back to this discussion, we don't have a lot of workshops like that really help fellow history students show there are other avenues to use history. So for you, Natalie, in your opinion, do you think that for the history field, workshops like these should be included and be seen as mandatory to help fellow history students really understand what they would like to do with their degree and provide them a possible path beyond the two?
Most definitely, I wish those were offered to me, because I'm the type of person that if there's only two options available to me, those are the only two that exist in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I guess for me, I'm kind of split down the middle. I am teaching people as kind of a guide while also working in museums, but I would think, yes, workshops to show history students that there's more to a career in history than just those options. Like you were saying, authors, or heck, even if you're a musician, or
Yes.
I mean, full disclosure, I am a Sabaton fan.
Yes.
So
Thank you. I was wondering when someone was actually going to say that. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Now you just made me happy.
you're so welcome. In fact, I credit them with in almost all of my newsletters, because like this is where I learn things, and I just go into a rabbit hole and learn more, and I want to share that information with people. But even like artists, like, you can make graphic novels of history, and I've yet to read it because I have so many books that I'm reading at once. But Mouse, the
Oh, yes.
Mhm.
Absolutely, yes.
Apparently even some I survived insert event here. I survived Pearl Harbor, and so literally the possibilities for history students are endless, and I do believe we should have workshops that will help them see that, and help guide them to whatever path they want to choose. I honestly wish I had gotten that.
Yes. And also, viewers and listeners, for context, the reason why I was so excited is Sabaton is a European band that specializes in rock songs, but they have a basis of history. Some of their most famous include the Night Witches, Shirayama, Devil Dogs, The Last Stand, Sergeant York, Red Baron, the Lost Battalion, Templar, Steel Commanders, and many more. If you haven't checked them out yet, I urge you to, because not only is it great music, but there's another channel to them where they have a resident historian who breaks down the context of that song and what the lyrics mean, because the lyrics also tell you the history of the story or the battle or the person.
Go listen to them right now. This is a demand from both of us.
Awesome. And kind of, we're almost nearing the end of this amazing interview now. I could talk with you for hours on this call, but we're almost nearing the end. So we have a few final questions left. And this next one, which I think is important to talk about, is networking as an historian, which I think is very vital. And just like the question before, do you agree that for historians, especially for independent historians, it is vital to begin networking and connecting with other individuals? And are there any special people you'd like to give a personal shout out who have helped you on your journey?
It definitely does help to network. Even I mean, on LinkedIn, I connected with Alex Kershaw, the author. I enjoy a lot of his work, so even just when he accepted my connection, it's like, yay! Even though I'll probably never be able to talk to him in my lifetime, I got a connection from someone I actually work I enjoy. Even talking to he's also on LinkedIn, so I'm going to give him a shout out. Corey Graff, who works at the National World War II Museum, and he was in the same program as me. Getting to talk to him about what it's like being storytellers for World War II, and why we need storytellers.
Yes, absolutely.
To keep people interested. And for me, networking, it does kind of help in who you know. So yeah, get out there and do your best. Advertise yourself. I mean, that is certainly something I am myself am very much not used to. It really it wouldn't be bad. It does help.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And this question, the final question, Natalie, is probably my personal favorite. So here it is. And it's a very loaded question, so brace yourself. So I've been doing this show now for about 6 to 7 years. And I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of authors and a lot of historians as well. From shout out to Dr. Thomas Smith, Stephen Tibble, his wife, my good friends Michael Stroud, Courtney Adkins, Lynn Marks, Chrissy Riley, and so many others from England, especially my good friend Jackson Van Uden, and many more. I'm sorry if I can't get all of you guys. I'm trying to go back in my memory banks, but all of you guys, you've taught me so much. And the thing that I've learned as a historian, which I think you've also will agree with too, Natalie, is that for us, whether you're an academic or a storyteller, there are two paths: be an historian and be known as a historian. One is dedicated to the art, one is dedicated to the business side. And ultimately, I'm just going to say it because it doesn't need to be said. This career as an historian, sad to say, it's not a get-rich-quick scheme. Will we all like it to be? Absolutely. But that is not the case. And we really have to really grind away to showcase who we are, whether that's, dissertations, conferences, presentations. That takes a lot of work. And the hard truth of this industry is that, there is no guarantee whatever project we work on is going to be the start of our legacy as an historian, to be known throughout the world or to be seen as a highly respected individual in our area of expertise in the field of history. Not to say it's unattainable, but the goals have to be realistic. And I feel that is almost like another workshop class to really talk about, the truths of being an historian. So let's imagine this scenario, Natalie. Let's say you're invited to a university to give a workshop class to entry-level historians as well as students in the history field finishing up their last year to their last semester. And you could teach among the array of topics to this class in the field of history of being historians. What is the one topic you would want to teach and share with them, and also have it be used as a pearl of wisdom to leave behind?
Oh, geez, that is a loaded question.
Yeah.
I could choose what to teach. Well, I think if I had the choice, I would teach World War II. But if it's a workshop, I would probably want to teach them about all of the different opportunities that having a degree in history can give you, not just the known ones. Again, if I have an audience that's more creative, artistic, but they have that passion for history and they don't know how to put the two together, I'd probably use workshops to help guide them in that. And really, again, probably the pearl of wisdom I can probably give is history is, like I said before, it's the story of people. It's everyone's story. It's your story. It's mine. We're all having our own histories and we're all living in histories. And to tell those stories will ensure that they won't be forgotten after we are gone. I mean, I sometimes participate in the Wreaths Across America ceremonies where we raise enough money to lay a wreath at the grave of a veteran. But the thing is, when you lay the wreath, you have to say their name. And the kind of the slogan for that organization is, you die twice. The first time is when your heart stops beating. The second time is when no one remembers your name. Their names. So by telling these stories of people, however they see fit, it will ensure no one is forgotten, and it will ensure that when our times come, we won't be forgotten either. Even if it's by a small amount of people, those who remember your name will ensure you'll be remembered.
Absolutely. Beautifully said, Natalie. And with that, viewers and listeners, we conclude another amazing, incredible historians interview on the show. A huge thank you to Natalie Brennan for making her official debut on the Wandering Scribe Show. We wish her the very best on her journey and her continued success. Now, Natalie, where can people find you on social media if they want to reach out? And at the museums that you are working at, are there any upcoming events that you would like to highlight in case people want to visit?
Well, like I said before, I'm not really big on social media, save for LinkedIn.
Okay.
Natalie Brennan, that's my name. Let's see, the museums I work at. I'm mostly at the Mighty Museum and Historic Site. We currently have a art exhibit going on until September. It's called WWII Medicine Water. It's all of these different pieces of artwork by Native artists.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely would be a fun thing to check out. And the museum kind of puts on various events. One that's upcoming in August is Campfire and Rock Art Mysteries. So the campfire is several museum staff and docents will tell Native stories around a campfire. There's marshmallows. And then the Rock Art Mystery Tour, one of our docents or staff will lead a tour of the historic site's petroglyphs.
Ooh, I like it. Nice. I'll provide all those down below in the description of this video. And make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date with the last few episodes for the month of July. A huge thank you again to Natalie for coming on the show. And hopefully we can have her back possibly in a Historians Lounge episode for season 3. I am still accepting guests. And we may do a topic on World War II. If you would actually tell you what, viewers and listeners, if you would like to see Natalie back on the show for the Historians Lounge, comment down below. And if there's a topic you would like for us to talk about for World War II, comment down below as well. As always, everyone, thank you so much for your love and support. This is the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill signing out, wishing you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. And until next time, happy weekend, everybody, and we'll see you all next Monday.